let's turn on some football music, and here we go with my Week 1 picks. Now, we're going to kick things off here with the game that is tonight, of course, the Cowboys and the Bucs. Now, the Bucs are favored by 7.5. I've seen some spreads be 8. I've seen some spreads be 8.5. And this is what I'll say about this game. Every time we think a game is going to be a blowout, it usually goes the other way. Or every time we think a game's going to be close, it's going to be great, it ends up like the Super Bowl and it's going to be a blowout. So we never really know what to expect. There's a lot of instances where we expect a shootout and it turns into a 10-7 game. Or we expect a 10-7 game and it turns into 35-31. The NFL is one of the hardest sports to predict. It's one of the best sports to predict. And I will say, if you are playing a fantasy football league, whether it's season long in ESPN, Yahoo, or one of those other fantasy football leagues, or, whether it's daily fantasy with DraftKings or FanDuel, you probably have a lot of Cowboys on your team. You probably have Dak Prescott on your team. You probably have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott. For Tampa Bay, you have Tom Brady, you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin, you may even have, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, the Bucs defense. So there are a lot of fantasy scenarios in play here, and even though Zach Martin, the best offensive lineman for Dallas, is out due to COVID, I think it's a big deal, but I feel like everybody is counting the Cowboys out, and maybe that is because of Dak coming back off the ankle injury. Maybe it is because of Dak's shoulder. But I just feel like there's going to be a lot of emotion with Tampa Bay. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Tampa Bay is going to be great this year. I already said I think they walk out of the NFC as champions. They brought back all 22 starters, which is unprecedented. They're going to be better because they had an offseason. They had reps. But there is something to say about that banner drop. And Tom Brady's been a part of it. Remember that team in 2017 that eventually lost Super Bowl 52 to my Philadelphia Eagles? The opening night after they won Super Bowl 51 against Atlanta, they hosted Kansas City. And everybody thought it was the year that New England could go 16-0 once again. And what happened? Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Alex Smith took over the game. And Andy Reid in Kansas City dominated Bill Belichick in New England. Now, I think Andy Reid is a huge upgrade over Mike McCarthy. Bruce Arians is a very good offensive coach. I think it's more of a mismatch between Bruce Arians and Mike McCarthy than it is Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. But don't be surprised here if this is a ball game tonight. Ezekiel Elliott is in great shape. He looks like he's in the best shape in the last 5-6 years. And the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball a little bit. Again, we know how great Tampa Bay's defense is. But the banner drop and everything that goes with it and everybody counting the Cowboys out, folks, I wouldn't bet this game, but don't be surprised if Dallas, maybe they don't cover, maybe it's an 8, 9, 10 point game by the end, but this will be a close game in my opinion, halfway for the third quarter, even going into the fourth quarter. So up next, we have my Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Sirianni. The first game is Nick Sirianni is our new head coach, a new head coach in Atlanta, Arthur Smith. The Falcons are favored by 3.5, and this is a very interesting game to me. This may be the shootout game of the week. Both these defenses are very young. Now, Philadelphia has more talent up front than Atlanta, with Josh Sweat, a young kid who I think is going to have a really good year. Obviously, a Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham. Atlanta really only has Grady Jarrett up front. Once you double team him, you can get past them. The Eagles have a corner and Darius Slay. Atlanta has no corners. The Eagles have a very good safety combo with Rodney McLeod and Anthony Harris. Atlanta really doesn't have any safeties. But what I'm wondering in this game is if my Philadelphia Eagles are going to be able to cover Atlanta Falcons rookie tight end Kyle Pitts out of Florida. Yes, Julio Jones is gone. Yes, Todd Gurley is gone out of the running game. They replaced him with Mike Davis. Now, I'm not too sold on Calvin Ridley as a number one wide receiver. I know everybody seems to think he is, but just like everybody thought Juju Smith was a number one wide receiver 2 years ago, including myself, by the way, turned out to be wrong on that. He's more of a number 2 or number 3. I think Calvin Ridley is more of a number 2. I think he's going to struggle this year with the number 1 corner on him. But I think Kyle Pitts is going to have a monster year. Again, if you're a fantasy player here, I think Kyle Pitts, if you can get him in a draft, if you're still drafting by this point, or if you get someone trade for him, I think he'd be a very good value. I think he's going to have a great year. He could win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Atlanta's going to be able to score points, man. They got weapons. They got a good quarterback in Matt Ryan with a perfect system here with Arthur Smith. But Atlanta's a rebuilding defense. And the Eagles have a very smart new defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon coming over from the Indianapolis Colts. Though I do wonder if it's going to take some time for this defense to get their feet wet. Obviously, we don't know, Jalen Hurts. Is he the quarterback of the future? We're about to find out this year. Obviously, my team has some pieces with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Quez Watkins looks really good in camp at the wide receiver position. You had on Jalen Reagor from last year. Of course, at the running game, you have Miles Sanders, Boston Scott. But are the Eagles going to be keeping up with Atlanta's offense? I don't think so. I think this is more of a 4 to 7 point game, so I wouldn't bet the spread. I think it's pretty close, but I got the Falcons winning at home. So we have the Chargers at Washington up next, and this is a very interesting game because, as you guys know, I don't love the Washington football team this year. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, believe it or not, is a significant, and yes, I said significant, downgrade to Alex Smith because Alex Smith would not turn the ball over, and that's how Washington won the NFC East or West, whatever you want to call it, last year. Ryan Fitzpatrick will have games where he will throw 6 touchdowns, and he will have games where he will throw 6 interceptions. Typically, he's good earlier in the season rather than later in the year. The Chargers have a new head coach in Brandon Staley. Justin Herbert is a very young, talented quarterback, but this is going to be his first game with fans in over 2 years with a very good defense in Washington. Again, Fitzpatrick is hot earlier than later. I think him and Jerry McLaurin have a good game, and I'm going to pick Washington here to beat the Chargers at home and lead the NFC East after Week 1. Moving on to the next game here, we have the Steelers at the Bills. Now, I'm going to predict Buffalo to win this game, and I think pretty handily. There's something going on in Pittsburgh here with TJ Watt. I don't know what the situation is. It may be resolved by the time you are seeing this podcast. I'm recording this on a Wednesday, by the way. Of course, you are seeing this on Thursday, the kickoff of opening day. So I don't know if TJ Watt's contract situation is resolved or not yet. But Pittsburgh doesn't have any secondary. They lose Mike Hilton to Cincinnati. They lose Steven Nelson to my Philadelphia Eagles. Their secondary is going to be struggling to cover Stephon Diggs. I think Buffalo is a really talented team. They drafted 2 good pass rushers in the draft. Josh Allen's only going to take a step up. Buffalo will be a force to be reckoned with, and they will beat the Steelers at home. Up next, we have the Jets going to Carolina. Now, I'm going to pick Sam Darnold here at home to beat his former team. As you guys know, I'm not a big fan of Zach Wilson. I'm not a big fan of Robert Saleh. We don't know if he can go. I don't know if Zach Wilson is the quarterback future of the Jets. And let's be honest, Carolina's got some good pieces. In Robbie Anderson, in Christian McCaffrey. They have some good weapons that Sam Darnold can throw to. I think he's going to use McCaffrey a lot. Carolina's invested a lot on the defensive side of the ball. I think they get after Zach Wilson. I think the Jets' offensive line struggles, and I think Carolina takes care of business at home. Up next here is a very interesting game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is an interesting game to me because we all know the Vikings defense was one of the worst in the league last year, and I don't think that they can be worse than they were last year, but they're still going to be pretty bad. And Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, they may not have a great offensive line, and Burrow is coming off that brutal ACL and MCL injury. Jamar Chase has struggled with drops, even though I like their weapons a lot. I like T. Higgins, I like Tyler Boyd, even without A.J. Green. I think Joe Burrow has legit weapons, and Jamar Chase can learn how to catch. He may be this year's Justin Jefferson. I think, really, when you look at candidates for Offensive Rookie of the Year, at least the receiver position, you're looking at a Devontae Smith. You're looking at a Jamar Chase. You're looking at a Kyle Pitts. Those, to me, were the 3 best receivers in the draft. Now, I like Chase and Pitts over Devontae Smith, even though he won the Heisman myself. I think Devontae Smith has some durability issues, which I really didn't get to talk about in the Eagles-Falcons segment. But I love Jamar Chase coming out of LSU. He's reunited with Joe Burrow. If he can figure out, again, how to catch the football, I think he's just got some rookie yips. But if he turns it around, the Bengals are going to be able to score points. But just like we saw last year with the Chargers, I think it's going to be tough sledding week 1. I think Mike Zimmer has something to prove this year. I think Kirk Cousins has something to prove this year because with Kellen Mond behind him, the Vikings can really pull the trigger at any time. And they do have Adam Thielen. They do have, Justin Jefferson. Even though they lost Irv Smith at tight end, they got two tremendous weapons. They got a top 5 back in the NFL. Some would say even top 3 in Dalvin Cook. So the Vikings have enough pieces. The Bengals don't really have a good secondary. I'm going to pick the Vikings here on the road over the Bengals. Up next, we have the Seahawks and the Colts in Indianapolis. And you guys know that on BucksToRadio.com earlier this February, before the schedule even broke down, I said, hey, listen, the Colts could be the next dynasty in the National Football League, and I truly meant that. If Carson Wentz stays healthy with Frank Reich, I think he can get back to that 2017 MVP level. I love their weapons, even though T.Y. Hilton is hurt. I love T.Y. Hilton. He's always been one of my favorite receivers in the National Football League. They have him. They have Michael Pittman, who to me is going to be a growing star at the receiver position. Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell. At tight end, you have a great tight end in Jack Doyle. They have one of the top 3 to 5 offensive lines in the National Football League, and they were one of only 5 teams last year to be top 10 in both offensive and defensive scoring and rankings. So the Colts have all the pieces. Here's the problem. Week 1, they're facing Russell Wilson, and they got a ton of injuries, and they got a lot of COVID issues. They got people, including their quarterback Carson Wentz, who is refusing to get vaccinated for some odd reason that I don't understand why. They got him coming off a foot injury. They got Quinn Nelson coming off a foot injury. They got Eric Fisher coming over from Kansas City to Indianapolis, and I believe he's banged up with something. So they got a lot of guys banged up. We know how good Russell Wilson is on the East Coast. We know the Seahawks are going to look to prove something this year. I think DK Metcalf this week should go off because I don't love Indianapolis' secondary. Again, I think losing Jonathan Gannon, who was the secondary coach there, he got the best out of Xavier Rhodes last year. He's now, as I just mentioned, the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. That is a huge loss. I'm going to pick Seattle to go on the road and beat the Colts. Another NFC West team on the road taking on another AFC South team. We have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Tennessee Titans. Now, you guys know I've been a big fan of the Cardinals for the last 2 years. And this year, defensively, they upgraded their defensive line by adding J.J. Watt. They added another receiver in A.J. Green to go along with DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. At center, they got one of the best centers in the league in Rodney Hudson from the Las Vegas Raiders. So they made some significant upgrades. I think Arizona's a sneaky good team. Kyler Murray could be a sneaky early. I'm not saying he's going to win it. I'm not even saying he's going to finish in the top 5. But at least early in the year, could be a sneaky, very good MVP candidate. I know he was a top 3 fantasy quarterback last year. He was my fantasy quarterback that helped me win 2 fantasy championships. I'm all in on Kyler Murray. I think the dude's a stud. I think he's better than a lot of these kids that came out the last 2-3 years in the draft. Credit to Arizona as well for moving off Josh Rosen. And like Miami should have done with Tua Tagovailoa, realize the dude can't play and just go get a dynamic playmaker in Kyler Murray, change the offense around. They still have Chandler Jones. They still got J.J. Watt. This team is going to be very good. They still got Buda Baker in the back end. I love what Arizona's doing, and I think Arthur Smith's going to be a huge loss for Tennessee. Yes, the Titans have probably the best running back in the National Football League in Derrick Henry. Yes, the Titans have Julio Jones. Yes, the Titans have A.J. Brown. My issue with them is, are they going to be able to get Julio Jones and A.J. Brown their touches? Are they going to still be more run-centric with Derrick Henry? Now, that offense last year, even with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, they were explosive. But is Julio Jones going to be upset because they're running the football more? He's not getting enough targets. Is Ryan Tannehill, who was playing like an MVP candidate for the last 2 seasons, is he going to regress a little bit under Arthur Smith? Now that Arthur Smith is not there. I think it's going to be a learning curve for Tennessee, and I think Arizona is a surprise team. I think they go in there. Tennessee's defense is still a mess. I think the defensive line for Arizona gets after Tannehill, and Arizona walks into Tennessee and gets the W week 1. Moving on here, we have the Jaguars at the Texans. The Jaguars are favored in this game by 2.5. Houston is starting Tyrod Taylor. You already know how I feel about Houston. They may be lucky to get one win this year. I'm taking the Jags. I think Urban Meyer has a lot of tricks up his sleeve, at least for week 1. We saw that in 2013 with Chip Kelly in Philadelphia. We saw it with Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. Typically, these college coaches early on, they don't have a lot of tape on them, National Football League tape, because all they can do is study college tape. They're going to throw a lot of wrinkles at you. I don't think Houston and David Culley is going to be prepared, and I think Trevor Lawrence looks really good week 1. And the Niners at the Lions. Finally, the last week 1 o'clock game. This is really a mismatch. Jared Goff and the Lions, they do have more pieces than I actually thought. Tight end T.J. Hawkinson's pretty good. They got DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. But San Francisco's defensive line is just going to overwhelm that Lions offensive line. I don't think this game is particularly close. San Francisco is minus 7.5, so Detroit is obviously plus 7.5. I would take San Francisco the minus 7.5 if I was betting this game. This is not in one of my top 5 bets, but I think San Francisco rolls Detroit here in Ford Field to begin the 2021 season. Moving on to the 4 o'clock games, we have Denver going to the Giants. And Denver and the Giants, they're two very interesting teams. You look at Denver, they have a great defense in Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons on the back end of their secondary. Offensively, they have a great tight end in Noah Fant. They have good weapons. Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. They got a good running back in Melvin Gordon. The question is, why is their quarterback Teddy Bridgewater? Is Drew Lock really that bad that he can't beat out checkdown Teddy Bridgewater? And is Teddy Bridgewater going to be able to get enough protection and get the ball to these receivers down the field? That's something Teddy Bridgewater has never really done. And for the Giants, we all know they were a shockingly well-coached team last year. Joe Judge looked like he had his team together. Though this year it looks like they had a lot of players retired in training camp. It looked like the team was kind of turning on them. They got Kenny Golladay, the wide receiver in free agency, who I don't think is a number 1. I think he's more of a number 2. Evan Ingram, is he still going to have the drop syndrome with all of his catches? They still have Sterling Shepard. They have some weapons. I already talked about their good defense. They're good up front. Patrick Graham's a very good defensive coordinator. But Teddy Bridgewater and the Drew Lock situation in Denver, is Daniel Jones the answer for the Giants? And I don't think so. I think Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a bridge to bad quarterback. I don't really love Teddy running my offense. He reminds me a lot of Tyrod Taylor, and I don't like being limited in that way. If I was Denver, I would have started Drew Lock. So both of these teams have quarterback questions, but Denver going to the East Coast is not going to be easy week 1, and the Giants think they're good. We're about to find out how good they are. Denver also thinks they're good. We're about to find out how good they are. Vegas has this spread as Giants plus 3, which means Denver, the away team, is favored by 3, which means Vegas thinks either A, the Giants aren't very good, or B, they just think Teddy Bridgewater is better than Daniel Jones. And this is one for Vegas I don't agree with. Spoiler alert, this is not going to be one of my bets for week 1, but I was very close to putting this bet on the list because I would take the Giants plus 3, and I think the Giants upset the Denver Broncos. Moving on to a game that's going to take place at the Jaguars Stadium, Green Bay going to New Orleans. Shout out to everybody going through that Hurricane Ida in New Orleans. I hope you guys are all safe. I hope you guys all have power and stuff like that. Again, maintain, social distancing, keep everything going along with that, and I hope you guys stay safe. But to me, Green Bay is an underrated team this year. I think everybody thinks they take a step back. I actually think they take a step forward. I think Aaron Rodgers on a mission. I think Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and I think the Saints, with Jameis Winston, I think they're going to struggle early. I think it's going to be adjustment without Drew Brees. They don't even have Michael Thomas, so I don't even know who their number 1 wide receiver is going to be. And, I will take Green Bay here. I'll take a -4, and I think Green Bay could roll New Orleans down in Jacksonville. The next game, we got the Dolphins taking on the Patriots in New England. A battle of 2 Alabama quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. Now, you guys know how I already feel about Tua Tagovailoa. I would have moved off him this past draft if I was Miami. I've seen enough of him. He can't get the ball down the field. Now, they're trying to justify it. They got him number one receiver, Jalen Waddle, out of Alabama, who I was not in love with entering the draft. They do have a tight end in Mike Gesicki, but I just think New England's better coach. I think they have more weapons. We know New England spent money. Now, Hunter Henry's not going to play week one, but they still have Janu Smith. They have Kendrick Bourne. They have Nelson Aguilar. It's not a great receiving crew, but it's better than what they had last year. And they get Dante Hightower back and all those defensive players that opted out last year. New England's going to be very good on defense. We know how Bill Belichick overwhelms quarterbacks, especially young and rookie quarterbacks. I think Belichick and the Patriots here win at home and go to 1-0 against the Miami Dolphins. Up next, the big 4 o'clock game of the week. The Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. The rematch of last year's AFC divisional round. Now, everybody knows my hometown roots are here in Cleveland, Ohio. I worked at Kent State University for the last 4 years under Black Squirrel Radio. And there's a sentiment, at least between some of the fans that I know that are Browns fans and the internet Browns fans on social media, that think this is a foregone conclusion. The Browns are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The Browns are better than the Chiefs, and the Browns are going to the Super Bowl. And I have said for the last 3-4 months, however long it's been since the schedule got released, the Browns got a bad break week one. Andy Reid averages 30 points a game at home week one. Averages 30 points. Yeah, Browns, as good as your new pieces on defense might be, first of all, you haven't played a snap in the preseason. No, I'm not a fan of preseason, but it's just a point. We saw Tampa Bay, who was better than New Orleans, I believe, all year long, even though New Orleans won the division last year. We saw that be proven the divisional round. We saw Tampa Bay get worked around week one with barely any training camp, no preseason. This Browns defensive unit, yes, they're good on paper, but is Jadeveon Clowney going to be healthy? Is Denzel Ward going to be healthy? Is Greedy Williams going to be healthy? Is Greg Newsome going to work out as your first round pick? Is Myles Garrett going to be better than he was last year down the stretch? There's a lot of questions, and it's going to take the Browns some time to figure it out. And by the way, Kansas City, even though they have 4 new starters on their offensive line, which is a huge concern, by the way, it is a huge concern. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Tyreek Hill. They have Travis Kelce. They are the best offensive team in the league. I know the Browns have Odell Beckham coming back. I know the Browns have Jarvis Landry. I know the Browns have Donovan Peoples-Jones. I know the Browns have Rashard Higgins. Tyreek Hill is better than all 4 of those receivers combined. And I know the Browns have 3 tight ends in Austin Hooper, Harrison Bryant, David Njoku. Guess what? Travis Kelce is better than all of them. I know the Browns have 2 great backs, but the Browns are not going to be able to win a shootout with Kansas City. In order for the Browns to win, they're going to have to run the football. If this game was in the cold in January, where players are slipping and you're able to run the football, I'd give the Browns a better chance. Since this game is in September, the sun is shining. Week 1, Kansas City playing with a tick on their shoulder after losing last year's Super Bowl in an embarrassing fashion to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kansas City bounces back. They beat the Browns week 1. I think it's by double digits. I don't think the Browns cover the spread. A lot of people are high on the Browns, and understandably so. They're a top 3-4 team in the AFC. They're not better than Kansas City. Browns fans, you need to lower your expectations. I realize you're excited because it's the first time you can be excited about a football team in 25 years. Maybe more than that. But folks, just amper expectations, okay? The NFL, it changes every year. The same is not the same. Every year is different. Rome wasn't built in one day. And losing to Kansas City week 1, believe it or not, is okay. You can beat them in the playoffs. I just said I would give you a better shot in the playoffs of beating them than this game. It's a hard game week 1, and I know you can't understand that because you think you're the best, and just because you're the Browns, you think you deserve to be in the Super Bowl. It doesn't work like that. You got to prove it on the field, and as much as I love Kevin Stefanski, Week 1, this just ain't it, Browns. Sunday Night Football, we got the Bears with Andy Dalton taking on the Rams, the New York Rams with Matthew Stafford. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of Matthew Stafford. I'm not a big fan of the Rams. I think Sean McVay is a little bit overrated. But they get a nice soft spot here with the Bears Week 1. If this was Justin Fields, I think it'd be a different game. But I think the Rams defense just takes over and the Rams beat the Bears at home on Sunday Night Football. And finally, on Monday Night Football, I had the Baltimore Ravens beating the Las Vegas Raiders in Vegas. Now, as much as I love John Gruden, as much as I love Vegas, I really like Baltimore this year. I know they just added in Le'Veon Bell because they lost, Justice Hill, and they lost J.K. Dobbins for the season. I completely understand where there's some concern. But for folks that say Lamar Jackson can't throw, Lamar's won an MVP, led the league in touchdown passes, and has more touchdowns, less interceptions, and more wins than Baker Mayfield. So for you Browns fans that say Lamar Jackson can't throw, and you just blame it on Freddie Kitchens and Hugh Jackson, sorry, that's not true. Lamar Jackson literally revolutionized the NFL with this new look offense. I know they struggled in the postseason, but this isn't the postseason. Las Vegas' defensive line still isn't very good besides Max Crosby. They're not going to be able to get a lot of pressure on Baltimore. I think Lamar Jackson has a huge running game. I think this is a big ground and pound game. Josh Jacobs may have a good game, and Vegas may be able to move the ball a little bit, but I don't think they're going to have the ball enough. I think this is really a ball control game. We know Baltimore's always fresh right out of the gate. We know they're really well coached right out of the gate. We know Lamar Jackson is always motivated Week 1. I think Baltimore looks really good, and they beat the Raiders on Monday Night Football. The first time Vegas is going to have fans in that stadium is going to be unreal. I understand that. But it's also the first time everybody's going to have fans in over a year, pretty much, at least for a full-packed stadium. You may expect more home teams to win Week 1 because of that, but I'm just going to stay true to my guns and say the better team is usually going to win Week 1, and I think the Ravens are better than Vegas. So I'm going to pick Baltimore here again on Monday Night Football.